We now present to you a fireside chat with Mr. K. Pandiarajan on the theme Journey of Visionary. We have with us Dr. Saundarya Rajesh, who will take the session forward. Dr. Rajesh is a social entrepreneur, founder, and president of Avatar Group. Dr. Saundarya Rajesh changed the game for the Indian women professionals by introducing the concept of career intentionality and career re entry to corporate India. Avatar has counseled and placed over 75,000 second career women. She is the advisor of choice for an impressive list of organizations and leaders on the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I now request Dr. Saundarya Rajesh to please introduce Mr. K. Pandiarajan and take the session forward. Over to you, Ms. Saundarya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ipshit. A very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us for this session today. And it's just an incredible honor and a fantastic opportunity to actually have with me one of the icons of not just the HR sphere in India, but also a role model who has not just dabbled in different spheres, but been supremely successful in every sphere that he has touched. Pandiarajan sir, KPR to many of us, who have actually seen his journey over the past couple of decades, is someone who absolutely really doesn't need an introduction to anyone who's passionate about HR. He is credited with actually having started the HR outsourcing business, that entire concept in India. KPR, as many of us may know, is a BE. He's an engineer from PSG Coimbatore, and he is then an MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur. He actually founded MAFA, which means in French, my word. And, at that time itself, the very name MAFA used to inspire a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, because it was so different from every other, organization that would be there in the HR space. And I think that term, MAFA, which is, my word or my commitment, is one that KPR sir has always kind of held firm. He, as many of us may know, was not only the founder of MAFA and later now the chairman of the new age HR services company, which is CLHR, and which he announced on Twitter he's going to take to actually its first IPO. He was also the former state minister in Tamil Nadu for Tamil official language, art, culture, and archaeology. Prior to this particular ministerial berth, he was also the minister for school education, youth, and sports department. When he, contested from the Avadi constituency in Chennai, it was a matter of great pride for all of us in the HR community, because here was a HR professional who decided to kind of, make his mark in the area of politics and public service. And he not only just made his mark, he actually succeeded at it. So, KPR sir, welcome to this session. Thank you so much for having agreed to be part of this session for the NHRD National Conference. And the theme for this conference, as you know, is Meta, Mega, Me, and More. And this is a very interesting, set of words. And so my, first question to you would be this. Meta, yes. Mega, yes, we know. Me, yes. But more, that word more. If I were to ask you, what represents that word more to you, what would it be, sir?
Thanks. First, let me wish everybody here. Already have some quick messages from old friends. I see
Yes.
Harish, Nathan, a whole lot of people responding here. I'm very thrilled. But more really means going beyond. More means transcending. And to me, I always remember one small story which the guy called Pullenberg, who taught us all this thing called process work, used to say. He used to talk about the earlier French president one guy who nobody was understanding whether he was communist or capitalist or socialist. And De Gaulle, De Gaulle was
Yes.
one of the big
Yes.
French presidents. So he
Charles
was
de Gaulle.
asked the question, look, tell us, are you to the left or to the right? So he always used to say, I'm beyond, I'm above. That was the question which he always used to respond as. And to me, the more is more like a transcend kind of a thing. And I think in this, even this theme, I see meta, mega, me, and more kind of a things. To me,
Yes.
this whole idea of excellent theme. First, I must congratulate whoever has chosen this. I think it's a phenomenal theme. Often, you end up with conflicts between the meta and the mega. And to me, for the me to transcend the conflicts of meta and mega, moreness is really needed. Moreness means that going beyond. And to me, that's the simple meaning of this word. Moreness is always transcending. Moreness is always
Super.
going beyond. And that's what I would like to
Super,
discuss.
super, sir, super.
Thank you.
So I think that's a clear, address and message to our audience. I think whatever we choose to do, are we doing more? Are we actually transcending that particular level or that definition and going more? And I think that's fantastic. Sir, on the topic of meta, now, it's a word which has multiple interpretations, and it's a very popular word today. No, I mean, it has the significance of representing something deeper, something higher. And we have all our millennial generation often using the word meta whenever they are describing a movie or a piece of art, and immediately meta comes in. And it has also inspired many terms like metacognition, meta language, metadata. And you are a creator. If you were to create a word using meta, what would that word be?
You see, when the first picture which came to my mind is that of a question I always had in mind. I've always liked reading the parables of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. When I read his history, often he gets into a certain state which Vivekananda could never figure out. What is the state of being he is? And in English, the various people who try explaining it, ecstasy and oneness with God. He really kind of shivers, quivers all over the moment and things like that. I think the term we really came to my mind is meta joy. The kind of going beyond what is defined as joy to really have oneness with oneself and oneness with God. I think to me that meta joy is the term which came to my mind. And at one level, uh, the entire crux of HR is how to create meta joy moments in the organization. To me, I think creating these meta joy moments and moments of intense leadership as a process we all attempt to define. I think to me, it's all centered around creating meta joy moments in the organization. So that's the word I like.
Awesome. Folks at the NHRD conference and people who are tweeting about it, you have a new hashtag meta joy. So go for it and tweet about meta joy today.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. So, I have had the opportunity and pleasure of, listening to your story on multiple platforms and forums. And you often speak about your childhood. And you come from a deeply underprivileged family. And, that KPR, who was actually part of, Sivakasi Match Factory. How is that KPR? How is he? Is he still there?
I don't think we were underprivileged in any sense. We were a very well privileged family. I was from a nice joint family. My grandparents brought
Okay,
me
sir.
up.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
my father passed away very early. He was a worker in a match factory. And
Okay, sir.
yeah, they may be economically underprivileged, but I
Got
think
it.
they're very socially well off in the sense it's
Wonderful,
a village I'm
wonderful.
always very proud of.
Yeah.
My village near
Yeah.
Shivakasi, a village called Vilambatti. I grew up in a joint family. Every
Okay,
year there
sir.
used to be at least one or two additions in the family. So in engineering college, when I was sitting and writing from PhD Tech, I used to write inland letter, it always overspills with the name of people, because everybody's name I have to write down. So it's like very good joint family. Yeah, we were very
Okay.
tightly knit in a 1,000 square feet. Maybe we were 45 people living together or whatever. But I think it was not a childhood. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I used to work in the factories, and as I was born, my grandfather, who was a cook at that time, who came to Blambati and started a match factory. So we were what you would call as a tiny sector entrepreneur family or whatever. So everybody has to work. So there's nothing like it's not child labor as it is made up currently. So we all go to school, we come back and work in our own factory, kind of a thing. So it's a good ambience, I would say. Yeah, I didn't know much as to what I was doing after I passed out my PUC and went to engineering and did my. I don't think they had a clue to what this XLRI business is, but I think they had a lot of trust in me, and whatever hard work they were doing, they were sending money, to sustain me or whatever. So
Nice.
then I went to a multinational, BOC, British Oxygen, worked there for 6 years. Then met this great human being, V. Krishnamurthy. I mean, mentored by him in whatever. I think he was a living edifice of HR, in my view. So,
Uh-huh.
working with him for 3 years in his private enterprises
Uh-huh.
gave me enough of understanding to start my own company. So, MAFA happened like that. So, the early period, yeah, I mean, my father passed away very early, but I was a child of the society. A whole lot of people brought me up in the village. In the village, everybody owns everybody else's. So that kind of ownership I really had. And I think, yeah, I always had institutions which made a big impact on me, whether it's PSG Tech or whether it's XLRI. I think they had, or my school, which I'm very, very proud of, the uh,
Okay.
Sivagasi Victoria School, as they call. In those days, they used to start all schools by the names of the British empresses and emperors in those
Okay.
areas. This was the Kamaraj time when he went around asking every community to invest in the schools. And every place in South will
Okay.
have one school created by Kamaraj and supported by the community, kind of thing. I was very, very deeply impacted by the school, the colleges I studied in, and
Okay.
which laid the foundation for starting MAFA way back
Okay.
in '82. Yeah.
Okay. No, sir, you haven't still answered my question. I wanted to ask you that KPR who was there, who kind of absorbed all of these influences, and like you beautifully put it, it's a small, tiny enterprise. And so there was entrepreneurship there.
Yeah.
What you thought of yourself and how you made out the world view at that time, has that radically changed, or are there elements of it which still are relevant for you today?
Yeah, I think, see, thanks to my moving back to Shivakasi after the political stint started happening, I never lost touch with my roots and the perspectives that I held at that time. One, of course, is very deeply committed to my roots, roots as in my village, my place, etc. I loved politics because that gave me the opportunity to actually connect back to your roots in some sense. Okay, where the 18 years of entrepreneurship initially, starting Mofa and growing it to 1,000 crore company, which at that time was a big thing. Now everybody starts with 1,000 crore valuation in this industry. So those days, the pre-valuation but value important kind of a phase when I was there. I think some of the values which I deeply held was one, I think, in my belt, so to speak, Sivakasi belt. Even if you earn a crore a day, if you're working for somebody, then you're not valued. Okay, you need to, even if you earn 100 rupees a day, if you're earning it by yourself, whatever that self means.
Uh-huh.
The meaning of entrepreneurship has changed phenomenally over the next few years. But that value system of doing something on your own is very heavy in me, and it's always been there.
Super, super,
Even
super.
when the life went through yo-yo of
Yeah.
partly at times working for a multinational, partly at times selling to a multinational, buying back from a multinational, recreating at some point in time. I think this core value of being on one's own has been very deeply embedded in me. That's largely from the Vilambati days, I would say, or the Sankarnada family days, or whatever. That was the family I belonged to. So that's been a very strong influence. The second, of course, is um, I was always very strongly um, attempting to articulate whatever the society around me, wants to articulate. Often they say there's one punchline I always like about leadership is what is said in the Upanishads. Leadership is about articulating the unarticulated and uh, acting what is withheld. One of the Upanishads say that. So to me, this articulating the unarticulated has always been a uh, deeply held value. Okay,
Super.
even in PSG Tech, I was the only guy who was a leader who actually ran a strike. There was never a strike. After me, after that year, they dismissed the unions. There was no union as such. But I ran a strike at that time. And even in XLR, you'll be very surprised when we were in the first year.
Uh-huh.
Nathan will remember. There was actually something similar to a strike which had happened. There was one Jesuit father who they suddenly decided to pack him off, accusing him of moral turpitude and sending him off into a school in Bangalore. So we all actually rose against it and actually struck work in an XLRI, which teaches people on trade unions and strikes and all that. We had a strike in
Practical
XLRI, and I
learnings.
actually became a part of it. So to
Yeah,
me, I
yeah.
think this attempting to articulate the unarticulated and of course acting whatever is withheld has been a deeply held value, which
Super.
again came from my place, in my view, the Vilambati
Yeah,
days, so
yeah,
to speak.
yeah.
I think that
Great.
was deeply held value, which continued with me all through. So these are the two things I'd
Absolutely.
like to talk about. Yeah.
Fantastically said. And articulating the unarticulated is absolutely what leadership is really all about. It's that you see a vision,
Yeah.
and you not only have to articulate it powerful enough for your team
Yeah.
to carry you forward on that vision, but also to people outside who would have absolutely no clue of it. And that brings me to my next question to you, and you just referred to it about how today business has changed, valuation has changed, even HR and its interpretation has changed to a very large extent. When you started Marfa, what was HR at that point of time? And now, today, almost 30 years later, how is HR today? What
See,
are your
when Lata
thoughts?
and I started Mafa, my wife Lata and I started this together. She is a chartered accountant. And in those days, 1992, there was really nothing called HR service industry at that time.
Yeah.
There were over 10,000 companies, often single person companies, who were running placement agencies. I mean, it was never even called as a HR services company or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
a placement firm, kind of recruitment firm, kind of a statements, very small. The largest at that time was ABC, and even at that time, they had 100 employees when I started the company, and uh, I think an industry identity was never there. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
first 8 years when I was working in Morpha, the first phase of Morpha, where we grew to a 10 crore turnover. I remember in one of those executive recruiters association, our industry body, everybody stood up and clapped when we said that 10 crores we have crossed in the industry and all that. So the 10 crores was actually the largest anybody declared at that point in time. And then when we did 100 crores after 4 years, everybody stood up and clapped in Indian Staffing Federation, which I co-founded at that point in time. So to me, and of course, when we did 1,000 crores, we were the first to do and all that. I think the industry has been organizing itself. The industry has been evolving an identity for itself. When the first time when to BDO, we drew strategic investment, they did a research about the industry size in India, and they actually came up with a princely number of around 1,000 crores at that point in time. The industry size as a CDC, a government agency, had done a research. Foster's first research, and from that 1,000 rupees, 1,000 crores industry revenue. By the time it was 2010, when I sold my residual shares to Randstad,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the industry size, as per their definition at that point in time, they crossed around 12,000 crores. Okay, over a 6-year period,
Period.
2004 to 2010, the industry grew by definition. Many of them who never defined themselves to be staffing companies started defining as staffing companies. The HR services as an industry started giving way to different sectors of industry. Today, the staffing, facilities management, and security solutions together, now the investment bankers are classifying as one cut,
Industry.
where
Yeah.
the last report I read about talks about 54,000 crore industry.
Okay.
Today this industry sector as defined through the window of this, and now executive search is no longer part of this. HR consulting now has other contiguous industry sectors. I think today in the world of unicorns, industry definitions are changing phenomenally. Okay,
Okay.
now today you see the Darwin boxes and the Apnas and others who are the earlier people strong. Everyone who had a high valuation at that point in time when they attempted to raise external equity have in some sense transformed the industry. I'm always very proud that the first person to go and take venture capital in our industry was us. Marfa was the first one in 2000. I still
Okay.
remember the day when we were carrying 1 crore check from the Calcutta flight to Chennai. That was actually the first 1 crore check I've held in hand at that point, till that point in time. To have a valuation of 110 crores, bringing in 8.5 crores venture capital was to that time it was path breaking, and everybody was talking
Absolutely.
how did this happen? 10
Yeah.
crore company, half a crore profit, bringing in 8.5 crores as investment for a 8% stake in the company, kind of a thing, was very new. I think to me that 2000s, 2000, 2001, the dot com, pre-dot com, post-dot com phases was very exciting in the development of this industry. At that
Okay.
time, lots of
Okay.
money poured in, lots of multinationals came in,
Yeah.
started acquiring companies. We
Yeah.
truly started connecting with the rest of the world very deeply. And today,
Okay.
what's happening? The money which is flowing in by private equity, venture capital, angel investment into this industry. We did a research recently. There are at least 28 companies, Indian companies, in the HR consulting, HR services industries
Mm-hmm.
have raised funds through one of these sources, and the fund
Okay.
flow could well be in excess of $1 billion, which has come into this industry. So, to me, this is a big transformation in terms of the scale, scope, and depth of the industry. And
Okay.
I'm very delighted to play after 10 years of political life to come back into the corporate world and actually be a player where many of the norms, many of the beliefs in this industry sector seem
Mm-hmm.
to have seem to change phenomenally, in my view, where
Absolutely.
the game is getting played with different formulas, with different principles, and I'm glad to be back to come into the system again. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. So, there is this concept of positive discontent, where you very quickly, probably not even quickly, but you do very intentionally kind of, shift gears at various points of time in our life, simply because you build that sense of ennui very quickly with what you do, and then you want to explore kind of new fields. In your case, moving from one field to another is challenging enough. Moving from HR to politics, but in your case, not just moving to politics, but rising to great success, actually bagging a ministerial berth. Now, that is truly the epitome of intentionality, of having a goal and kind of moving towards it. So this today, one of the things that we see, in the workplace, one of the things we see, even not just our own teammates or the audience at large, it's even in our own families. We find that this quality of discontent actually takes on very different sort of shapes and very different permutation and combination when it comes to talent planning by organizations. So, as a leader who kind of moved from one field to another and then, kind of rose to the top over there, what would it be that you could share, not only with leaders of organizations, but also to people who are working there in terms of how to deal with positive discontent?
Okay, see, frankly, I don't know whether it's positive discontent or not. If you were to ask me to evaluate me in the three identities that I've taken on. First identity, that of a HR professional. Two
Uh-huh.
is that of an entrepreneur. Three as that of a politician or a public person, if you were
Okay.
to define that a little broadly. I would honestly, it's not humility with which I'm speaking. I would rate
Uh-huh.
myself as a fairly middling HR professional. I don't think I reached the height of excellence as far as HR is concerned. I was there for about 9 years. I worked in the HR function per se, BOC, and then a little bit in Idea, which is a company I used to work with, where the core function for me was HR. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the entrepreneurship of around 18 years, which I had together with Lata. I've again, I mean, 1,000 crores, pioneer in industry, all that got put on later. Frankly, 1,000 crore top line, but with a negative bottom line would actually connote not a very good entrepreneur. So to me, I had my heights of entrepreneurship, but I think I also had my lows of entrepreneurship. Frankly, the battle we had with the multinational, the battle for space, the battle for the net worth of your company, the kind of issues. I can write a good book, that I'm really sure, but I won't say that I will fit into the archetype of person who achieved excellence. Same way in politics. Yeah, I went into politics. I, contested the parliament election 2009 with a fairly unknown party run by an actor, Vijay Kant, and did a great success as per other people. 125,000 votes in the first election that you contest was positive in Virudhunagar, getting back to my roots, understanding, innovating. But I didn't win. I actually lost the first election. Then the second one, within 2 years, when I ran for the assembly, it was a big success at that point in time. But again, within 2 years, I moved to Amma. The phase of my political heights, if you were to really look at, that was under Amma, Madam Jayalalitha, who took a liking for me. I think we had a relationship which I'll always cherish at that point in time. And every minute in the assembly used to be a learning of a very, very different kind. For instance, first time he spoke about disinvestment that Tamil Nadu government needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was a speech which was meant to be 10 minutes, but it lasted for 2 hours with 8 interventions by Amma. I was at that time part of opposition. And at the end of it, I decided I must join hands with this lady. And the next 6 years was my professional height, politically speaking. So to me, to handle GST Council, I was the first member of the GST Council from Tamil Nadu, education, youth affairs, sports, and culture. The range of ministries that I got to handle, I think it was phenomenal success. But I also went to the depth of the low. I went to very, very quickly with many tumultuous changes which happened in the political firmament in Tamil Nadu. So it was interesting, this whole period, but not something which I would say the best of me I have been able to give as yet. And I really think now this phase when I come back to business, where the public issue I wanted to do in the earlier period, and then when the path forked out, I chose the path of strategic investment and didn't go through the IPO. Now I intend to take that to that route, because we had actually done the earliest startup with 60,000 rupees, and with a lot of crowdfunding with friends, relatives, with clients. Many mistakes were done along the way where we got diluted much earlier. So with all that now learning behind us, we are now restarted the life back to the corporate world. But I think what has been continuing is the identity of a HR professional, which I
Okay.
was only 9 years, but I think that identity has remained very strong even when I was in politics. The kind of assignments I was entailed to do were more in the nature of what a HR person or a HR
Mm-hmm.
consultant would do in corporate world to me.
Okay.
That has held very deeply with me. So I think in terms of my own learning continuity over the
Mm-hmm.
past this quality of discontent construct that you gave.
Yeah.
Was I discontented with the status quo? I want to get into something else. I'm not sure, because to me, right from I remember 1976 when I stepped into my engineering college,
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of interest in politics. I used to speak about Kakuri Thakur and Charan Singh at that point in time, sitting in the Coimbatore campus. I used to have a perspective on politics which was far, far wider than Tamil Nadu.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always deep in me. Someday I wanted to come in here, kind of a feeling. Same way, I mean, the movement into running my own company at my
Okay.
point in time when we started,
Mm-hmm.
I always had the intent of coming into politics, being a minister, being a leader in my own right. What kind of constituencies I need to nurture, all that was part of me in my view. So I don't think there's anything which I was discontented, change, make a U-turn, go into something else, kind of a thing. I've always had a continuity in my mind of all the three elements: the HR professional identity, the politician identity, and the entrepreneur identity.
Um, when you were speaking about this, and you kind of, obviously with very characteristic humility, you said that you were a middling HR professional and you weren't the kind of entrepreneur or successful entrepreneur according to your standards. And we spoke about you writing a book. I think, KPR sir, this entire thing of what you just described is itself, I think, positive discontent. You assess yourself, I think, rather harshly or with very, very high standards, is what kind of appears to me. But I have a question, one more question here, because we spoke about politics and the fact that you had that passion, in you, even as a young engineering student, to not just have a view or a perspective about what's happening around you in Coimbatore or in Tamil Nadu, but what was happening across the country. What would you say is your political style, or what style of political leadership is it that you follow or you ascribe to?
Yeah, see, often the and the style of leadership in politics may not be in sync with often what your party expects you to.
Okay.
I've always found that the parties I belong to have always been very leader-centric party. Would be the current phase in ADMK, the fair degree of no deification of a leader, kind of a thing. Otherwise,
Okay.
always all the three parties I've had been uh, and have been very leader-centric parties in my
Uh-huh.
view. Okay,
Okay.
and I think for you to get a niche carved out for you
Mhm.
would not be very easy unless it is at the mercy of the leader. Okay,
Got
so
it.
that's very clearly so. So the dichotomy often people like me face in parties of the kind that I've been part of have been how do you build a base for yourself uh, without in any sense being seen as non-differential to your leader. So
Okay.
that's been
Okay.
the biggest challenge. So you need to build something, but at the same time, you need to build it not with any because there will be 1,000 people who will go and tell your leader that he is trying to build
Absolutely.
something
Yeah.
of his own.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is the kind of a challenge. The kind of constituency that one builds often
Mhm.
used to center around the geographical boundaries. That is allowed in a party setting. So the first base that I could build was in Shivakasi,
Yes.
my own
Right.
place, my own Virudhunagar kind of a places. I used to be, I used to love campaign and the pre-campaign phase. I really felt it's a phenomenal thing. Everything of what Father McGrath, our director, used to teach me, I could deploy there. We used to have a professor called Dr. Father McGrath, who was our director also, who was a mentor, he was a
Uh-huh.
very deep friend to most of us who would have
Okay.
passed out of XRRA during that period. I would, he used to have a special liking for me. He used to always make me feel special. He'll always ask about my mother. In his own idealized version of my mother, he will keep her in his mind and all that. I used to actually deploy some of the things relating to basic managerial skills. He used to
Uh-huh.
talk about one subject there. Okay, I used to kind of keep all that very, very heavily in my mind. So that campaign period, pre-campaign, post-campaign, I used to really love. You really build a certain stature. And
Got
I think
it.
what Amma gave me, Jayalalitha Amma gave me, was one of the phenomenal opportunities was to be the spokesperson for the party. For
Uh-huh.
about 3 years, I was there. I
Uh-huh.
actually used to be the only face other than Amma who used to come on the public channel. Okay,
Oh,
for a 3 year
okay.
period. It's not a small thing in the party to be
It's
trusting
amazing.
somebody
It's
to do that.
amazing. Yeah.
That was a phenomenal exposure to me. Every channel I used to be on and understand this media,
Yeah.
visual
Yeah.
media,
Yeah.
and managing to make an impact. I think it gave me a base of my own where I could go from Virudhunagar to Avadi. I could go and win again, and with a lot of visibility which I had at that point in time, which also helps me in my view at this point in time
Uh-huh.
when media handling, press handling becomes critical as we run up to the IPO phase. It really is helpful
Absolutely.
for me. So these worlds are not as disparate as they are understood to be, the political universe and the corporate universe. They're not
Uh-huh.
really as wildly different. Like in GST Council, when I was part of that, I would
Uh-huh.
have met at least 100 plus industry bodies. I
Okay.
mean, the so-called leaders of the industry used to come and um, wait for an appointment to see if their GST can go down from 18% to 20% or whatever it is. And they used to come and some of the people who, even as a CEO of a company, you
Mm-hmm.
wait for a month for their appointment. You used to come and seek your appointment. So politics has its own power basis, its own ability for you to do things. One
Absolutely.
small effect of bringing down, for instance, GST in spices
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
by redefinition of the classification framework in
Okay.
GST
Uh-huh.
actually impact a lack of people in the Erode belt. If you were to really see the kind of macro impact a politician with a corporate perspective can do or a HR perspective can do is phenomenal in my view. So it's always an aspirational thing to go where you are. But
Absolutely.
you never it's a land of opportunities. It's also a land of landmines, really. Okay, so you
True.
never know when something will happen where you will, like this Paramapada soap on a butter we call
Yeah. Snakes and
snake
ladders.
ladders, you
Yeah.
go up and go come down kind of a thing. So that's again a very interesting game in my view.
I
MMAs happen every other day, and the companies go bust, parties grow, leaders happen, leaders go. I mean, it's a very interesting kind of a field in my view.
Amazing, amazing, sir, amazing. Folks in the audience, I hope you're really listening to this. I don't
Yeah,
think there would ever be such a sort of a ringside sort of a view into the mind of a very successful politician, and one who you and I can relate to. I mean, it's not that we're talking about somebody who's somewhere. It's one of us. So thank you, KPR sir, for that. I have a question which is about a philosophy that you expressed during one of your talks. Again, I could be wrong, but I remember you, kind of saying this. So I want to ask you about it.
yeah,
You referred once to the concept of karma capitalism. And you mentioned this in your talk because at that time, the idea was that capitalism should also take into account the fact that you would have certain macro, aspects or certain macro influences which could play that entire VUCA role into capitalism, into business. So, do you still hold that view of business, that whole karma capitalism aspect? What are your thoughts?
yeah. This is something which my first boss, Ashok Malhotra, taught me. This
Uh-huh.
idea of strategy by destiny. Whatever, Ashok Malhotra was my first chairman, my first
Uh-huh.
boss in professional career, and he was also the first chairman of MAFA when we
Uh-huh.
started. He kind
Uh-huh.
of lent spiritual leadership to the whole institutional leadership to MAFA earlier. He's now a flourishing organizational consultant, but he's the one who first opened our eyes to this idea that the Western model, still that time, was talking about strategy by destination. We are here now. You want to be there after 5 years. How will you go from here to there? SWOT analysis and all this stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he is the first person who gave this insight that today the world can only move by strategy, by destiny. Destiny is understood not as a static concept, but as a dynamic concept.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the context in which this karma capitalism business happened. And I remember at that time, Business Week had a title issue which called itself Karma Capitalism. That's a very earth-shattering new thought in management or whatever. I've always felt that in the new world, when the business models happen upturned every second year kind of a thing, with every company
Yeah.
which wants to disrupt, the companies which become unicorns, the companies which become phenomenally valued companies, they all attempt to disrupt something.
True.
Disrupt, this is the way the industry operates, this is what I want to do, using technology, using a new process, and disrupting. So to me, in this world of disruptions, you can't have strategy by destination at all. That I'm here, I want to be there, and this is how I will reach from here to there, kind of a thing. You can only talk about asking questions like, where have I come from, where am I going, who am I, kind of questions, which the process workers of the new era always have found comfort in asking. So this amoeba-like structures, structure itself is becoming a dirty word in many of the new economy companies. I think in this world, I think you can only do strategy by destiny, asking questions about your destiny. What are you defining yourself to be, and what's your identity, and where is it you're likely to land if you traverse the path. You can choose the path, you can choose the pace at which you go that path, and you need to constantly keep making modifications to it. That's the concept of karma capitalism, as I understand and I practice.
I think it's so relevant and absolutely spot on, especially coming as we are, on the back of the world's greatest crisis in human memory, which is the COVID crisis. I think it will be great for all of us to remember this aspect of karma capitalism. KPR sir, I have one last question because I think the questions are just piling up. We will try and do justice to at least maybe about 4 or 5 of them. I have one question, and it's a slightly sobering type of a question.
Yeah.
Successful people like you, and you are someone that by any definition is a super successful person. Probably not by your definition, but by the definition of every one of us in this room, a hyper successful individual. And usually it's customary, to ask such a successful person, what is the secret of your success? But I'm going to, ask you, what is the learning from your success? What is probably the price you paid for your success? Is there something you feel that you may probably have retained with you had you maybe not been as successful as you are?
In the sense you're asking what's the price of your success, right?
Could be
In
either
the
what's
sense,
your price of your success, what is the learning from your
yeah.
success, if you
See,
can
first,
say that too.
yeah, I want to take this opportunity, Soundarya, to dispel one of the major myths people have around me. Okay, I think it's the greatest impediment for me in political life was this myth, which was carefully cultivated by the corporate world. The myth is, if you sell 1,000 crore company, my wife Lata must be having at least 1,000 crores stacked up somewhere in the Golden Kings Court apartment that we live in. Okay, I want to dispel this myth firstly. Okay, one, it's not humility at all. I'm not a very humble person. I think there are so many people who know me who's been texting messages left, right, and center. Last thing they will identify will be with humility. Okay, I don't think it's humility out of which I'm making this statement. Most people outside world will not understand that I held only 70% stake in the company when I sold the last set of shares to Randstad. Most people will not understand that Morpha, which was the prime company in HR, organized company, could actually have a negative net worth with being in a multinational. For 2 years, they can manage to achieve this. Okay. And nobody would understand that we had a running court battle, which in a way sapped our energies at that point in time. And we actually realized much, much less than the 1,000 crore, which today's time and place would have given me at that point in time. So yes, I'm a moderately successful entrepreneur, if that makes you happy. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I was a pioneer. I would be happy to accept that. Tried new things, tried a whole lot of things which people didn't want to try. But I've judged by the standards of today's valuations and unicorns, I would be much, much lesser compared to most of the young kids today who start a business, get it valued at $100 million, $1 billion, kind of a thing. So I would, it's not a means of comparison of any kind. Yeah, from where I started, yeah, being where I am is a far, far higher kind of a level, which I've reached. But that's really not to say that I've been extremely successful, which is normally based on the assumption of 1,000 crore company, sale 1,000 crores at home kind of a thing. Okay, number one. Number two, the price of whatever journey I have chosen to, in my view, often has been at the home. Lata often became almost like a single parent. I think some of the best times I could have spent with my children, I don't think I spent. There's always a regret. Okay, so even today, I think the kind, okay, thankfully they've grown to be great human beings, the two of them. But my contribution to that has been next to nil. That's always a regret which I can't take away. You know, at the time now, to want to reconnect with them, to kind of be a good father and all that is very tough. The time is gone. One is trying, but to me, that price of whatever journey I've chosen to lead has been this, in my view. Thankfully, we have Lata who played more than a parent to the children, so that has been a positive. That's been a price of the success I would have paid. Otherwise, what I've lost, what I've gained has been a phenomenal amount of friends in different universes. There are people who, in the remote villages of Virudhunagar parliamentary constituency, who would value me, whom I would have touched in Avadi, in Virudhunagar, in many remote parts of Tamil Nadu. That has been, I think, a big blessing. I mean, the recollecting with a fondness wherever I've been a MLA, wherever I've been a political person. I think that's been a very positive. Like the bridge that I could build in Virudhunagar, the 7 bridges I built in Avadi, the tidal park I built here, all these will be a legacy, which is something I leave behind. But now I think the corporate legacy one leaves behind is what one is really working at. And it's equally exciting to now build CL into something of substance, where many people can find a shelter in this place to let go of their ambitions, give expression to their dreams and all that. That has been an exciting thing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, KPR sir. I mean, I have another dozen questions, but I think we have to take some from the audience. I have a question here which says, if you were to go back in the past and advise the 25-year-old Mr. Pandiarajan, what would you tell him?
Yeah, at 25, I was a young HR professional in Calcutta, working in the POC, the British Oxygen Company. And if I at 62 were to advise Pandiarajan of 25 years, I would say, yeah, I would have. Yeah, I would have probably lived the same way. I would, it was a very intense moment. The Calcutta 6 years was extremely intense moment.
Yeah.
And I would, only have said, I would probably want to live the
exact same life.
same way, except that maybe I would have given a lot more to my family than what I would have. Thankfully, thanks to Mafa, Lata and I, we used to be a 24/7 couple. So with her, I have no major regrets. But I think with the children, I would say I would have committed a lot more time, even if it means the company had grown a little less fast, which would have been good for the company in my view. So I think some of that part I would live a little more holistically.
Amazingly honest, amazingly authentic sharing, sir. Thank you. One more question is, what would you suggest with regard to value creation and contribution to our country? to the Gen X, Gen Y and Gen Z, keeping in mind that their value systems is kind of different, especially, startups and quick scaling, quick exiting. So what would you suggest with regard to value creation to the country?
See, I've been a mentor to many youngsters. That's been something which I've always valued, whether it's through TIE, through Chennai Angels, which I co-created at some point in time. There has been always a native lead foundation, which is doing tier 2, tier 3 kind of support. I've always been a part of this. I've kept in touch with them. I've seen um, no reason for the acute pessimism I see among the youth of today. I mean, pessimism in the sense, the moment you are going through a formal education, coming back with a lot of scare about entrepreneurship, scare about even, especially from the villages which I originate from. Um, the kind of raw guts with which many of the industries in India have been built, I suspect it's coming down. The kind of
Ah,
raw guts I see in the youth.
okay,
I would always
okay.
tell them, be reckless, be insane, go ahead, do things. I mean, I've um, never felt at any point in time that I've overstretched. One thing, of course, I do advise them is find a partner who would be independent, who can anchor the family when you are experimenting, or who
Absolutely.
could
Yeah.
stand by you, kind of a thing. That's something I always tell them. But otherwise, lend anchor to your family, but go experiment. Heavens are not going to fall if you step out and do things. I honestly believe entrepreneurship is the way forward. Being a professional in a modern organization also pushes you to be entrepreneurial. This thing of
Exactly.
dichotomy of being on my own or being a professional, it's really a meaningless dichotomy because today every
Absolutely.
organization wants you to be entrepreneurial as a
True.
professional. Okay,
True.
so I think that dichotomy should not bind them, but somewhere this nation building, value creation, and all that stuff, I see this deep scare, which is completely unnecessary, which is
Okay.
there in a
Okay.
large section of the youth that I interact with. And I think that's what I would ask them to dispel. If
Be
I have to
fearless.
from
You're
my
asking them to be fearless. You're
so
asking
both
them to
in
go by their
understanding
guts.
fearsome. I mean, as
Yeah.
they say in Tamil, Anjuvathu Anjamai
I mean,
Pedamai.
yes.
The things which
Yeah.
you need to fear, you
To
can
fear,
fear.
you need to.
But
Yeah.
often they don't fear the things to be feared. They tend to be sitting on undue fears, which are
Yes.
anxieties, which are completely unfounded. To
Okay.
me, I would
Okay.
banish that. Yeah.
Super, super. One last question. I know we are almost out of time.
Yeah.
And that question is, what simplified strategies can a startup have to be able to recruit excellent talent in the current industry scenario? Any strategy, some base strategy that a startup can have to be able to recruit excellent talent? I think this would be a great question for you, sir.
Yeah, see, for me, I've mentored at least 10 startups, and I've seen the startups which do well in attracting people are the ones which where the promoter is able to let a co-creation opportunity for the people who come in.
Okay.
Marfa's own success, in my view, limited success, had been largely due to our ability to bring in people at the campus level itself. At the time they come in itself, they will come with a belief of a co-promoter. I think that was important to me. And even in the new avatar, CL, which is what we are attempting to inculcate, which
Yeah.
is start by ESOP system, about 30, 35 people have been roped into it. And the core value of Marfa has been co-creation, building
Okay.
the institution together. We used to run institution meets and all that, where the entire intent is that look, there is no one promoter in this company. I mean, we formalized it with 8 of them co-holding the company at some point in time. So much so that 2 of the 8 of them have come in and now created CL, which is chartering a path which is far, far a higher trajectory compared to the earlier version. Now the CL as a company is a lot more profitable than the earlier version and a lot more fast track. They are growing 162% per annum, kind of a thing. That's largely because of our ability, in my view, to co-create or let people co-create. So allow the space for people to come in, treat them as your equals as far as creating the company is concerned. It doesn't mean that you need to dilute yourself as we did to 17%, but short of that, you will need to be able to allow them to come in letter, spirit, and everything. The way you treat them, the way you call them, the way you interact with them from the beginning, that needs to be there. To me, I think that's a true way to bring in people. There's another
Okay.
interesting way I saw in one of the startups. I wanted to mention this. Those guys actually don't look at the bio data. There's one small company in Chennai which is aspiring unicorn, I would say. They actually get people from very, very odd backgrounds, exceptions they take. They
Okay.
try to create a bunch of exceptions and create a company out of it. I think it was a phenomenal idea. The kind of when they seem to run a 0% attrition. I mean, they can't have attrition because the way they bring in people. That's another extreme way by which they've been able to integrate people. I won't look at your biodata kind of approach, and it has worked for them. So to me, I think somewhere look at something deeper as to whether I can have this person, I can live with this person forever kind of approach,
Got
which
it.
coming from Chennai, it was quite a surprise to me. So there are many ways by which people do, but the fundamental thing is,
Absolutely.
are you allowing space for co-creation for in your company with the people who are coming?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Sir, we have almost out of time, but I'm going to ask you 4 rapid fire questions,
Yeah.
which you have to, I'll just give you one word and you have to respond with few words, maybe a phrase or so. Whatever comes to your top of your mind. Okay. So let's begin now. Mafa.
Trust,
Okay. Politics.
uh, mentorship,
Okay. Energy.
uh, meta joy,
Oh, lovely, lovely. Family.
anchor.
Future.
Um, hmm. Future. Okay. All right. Yeah. Hi.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think, the fact that you paused and you thought that and you kind of arranged it in your mind before you shared, that was just beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, Dear people, I think this was a one rocking session.
Thank you.
India's very first HR organization to innovate and scale, creator of that organization, an individual who's the very personification of versatility, successful entrepreneur, someone who scaled their business multiple fold at a time when it was completely unknown, a renowned politician, someone who really redefined how politics can be done, and someone who's still aspiring for the next big success. That is Mr. K. Pandiarajan for you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Nathan sir. Thank you, NHRD
Thanks.
team, for this amazing opportunity to have this, this conversation with KPR sir. KPR, anything you'd like to say to our audience before we sign off?
We're very delighted to address NHRD, and they gave me the opportunity even before I was professionally born. I mean, in the sense when I used to work for BOC, I've addressed audience of the HR professionals, and I always see that as my first constituency, in the sense the
Oh,
first thing I belong to, kind of a thing. I've always said this: if you have to take politics, entrepreneurship, and HR profession as identities, my primary identity has always been being a HR professional. It's such a delight to address the forum with 80 other people whom I regard, and someone like you who I've always regarded as someone who is path breaking in the idea of flexicarius for women. And I think it's such a pleasure it's a meta joy moment for me. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I'm now going to hand it back to you. Ipshat, take it away. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. K. Pandiarajan, for weaving together the meta, mega, me, and more, and transcending through the themes with beautiful, thought provoking stories.
Thank
Thank you, sir, for discussing the concept of karma capitalism and
you.
your experience with building Mafoy.
Thank you.
We have a lot to learn from your humility and experiences.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saundarya Rajesh, for carrying forward such a positive and engaging fireside chat. It was filled with immense joy, energy, and a lot of experiential knowledge. Thank you, participants, for engaging in this enlightening and thoughtful discussion with a lot of interesting questions. Thank you so much. We now move forward to our next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.